All right. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back. We're now on to a roundtable about corporate creativity. And we're going to meet three really great people that I've known in the industry for a long time who have developed some really creative products, and talk to them about how they create value. They value creativity in their organizations and how they make sure that the creative performance of what they do is the same as the creative potential for what they can do within their organizations. And sort of look at that also in the context of the larger environment of working with publishers. So I guess I'll introduce them and we'll kind of start our chat, and this goes on until 6 o'clock. So if anyone has any questions, I'll start off and sort of seed the discussion with some questions, but if anyone has questions, just kind of pop up to the mics and we'll grab you and kind of make this as collaborative as possible. So first of all, I'll introduce Cliff Bleszinski, who is now at Epic Games and has been at Epic Games for a long time. Cliff and I have known each other for probably about a decade, and first game he worked on was a game I downloaded off CompuServe probably about a decade ago, and I'm not allowed to mention it apparently because it was the name of a Yanni tour apparently about 2 years later. So Cliff has said, don't mention that here, but he worked on Jazz Jackrabbit and is known for his work on obviously the Unreal series of games. So Cliff Bleszinski, come on up. See ya. Next is Lewis Castle from Westwood Studios. He is the co-founder of Westwood. He co-founded it with Brett Sperry in 1985, and Lewis is a man who juggles many things, just like he is actually. Little do people know he actually is a juggler, and he's shown me his juggling skills a couple of times, but he juggles everything from business to the creative end of Westwood these days, and he's now the general manager, and Westwood just shipped Command & Conquer Renegade for PC this week, and Lou's working on a bunch of new projects, and Lewis Castle, come on up. Thanks. And finally, Mr. American McGee, who many people know for his game AIAS that came up from Electronic Arts on the PC. American is now at his own company, Carbon 6, that's working on a number of projects, doing another sort of twisted fairy tale that he'll probably tell us a little bit about today. And come on up, American McGee. Now, I know all three of you guys are obviously sort of on the development side, which is an interesting thing, and you're all sort of part of organizations that are, created some really creative products. I guess the first thing I wanted to sort of talk about was the idea of how you value creativity within your organization and how you sort of create an environment that will allow for creativity, among your employees. Because you think about, you can never sort of predict creativity. That's one thing that's just very hard to model. And you need to sort of set up specific instances where there is creative potential, and then how does it actually turn into something that is creative? So I guess we'll just sort of go around first of all and talk about sort of maybe some of the unique things you do that hopefully allow for creative things.
Are we starting here with me?
Looks like you're starting.
As far as creative seeding goes, if that's the question, where do we begin? Obviously, with AIAS, we went out into the public domain and found a piece of property that allowed us to then sort of utilize everything we'd learned in the first-person, third-person game arena to create a product, that we knew was going to have interesting characters and a really rich environment. And in doing that, it really sort of it helped us to focus in really a lot on the whole creativity side of the thing. We used a pre-built engine. We used the Quake 3 engine to do that. Mm-hmm. And then as far as like actually seeding creativity, it all comes out of the world. It's like music and books and art and just absolutely everything that kind of passes in front of your eyes. You try to have people bring stuff in that they feel like is going to be a part of that world. I'm just thinking about, just to sort of clarify the question too, I mean, is there anything you do sort of in your process about how you go about designing a game that leads to creativity? Like when I was in Japan last year and I profiled Kojima and his team on Metal Gear Solid 2, and there, every day each employee has to write an idea in an idea book. And then, he reviews those sort of ideas and, tries to find creative ideas that way where everyone contributes an idea. Is there anything you sort of, did during the production of AIAS that you think led to it being more creative? I think a lot of the stuff we did in AIAS was creative borrowing of things we knew worked from other products. And I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that people make a mistake of in this industry is trying to reinvent the wheel again and again when it comes to things like interface, character interaction, level design. I mean, and that's one of the beauties of using a pre-existing engine is that you don't have to be reinventing that stuff. But at the same time, no, I mean, I think a lot of creativity is just borrowing from things you know work. And it's sort of that Einstein quote about knowing how, or creative genius is actually knowing how to hide your sources, borrowing type of thing.
Lou?
Well, I guess it started when we started Westwood. The reason we started Westwood Associates, before it was Westwood Studios, was just literally because we were tired of working for people that didn't really care about what was being built. They just cared about whether or not they were going to make money at it. And you know, we had all the hardware, we had all the expertise. It was just two people, so it was a whole lot easier back then, I suppose. But that was why we started the company, was to have an environment, to foster an environment where everybody who worked there was bettering themselves as an artist, bettering themselves as a creator. And so I think that, you know, certainly the company's grown to huge sizes, but I think there's a constant effort by so many people who've been around for a while to remember why it is we do this. You know, we really love it. So as far as actual practices, you know, we do a lot of things to foster interactivity between the people in the company. We try to do monthly social events. We do family social events. We try to get people together. When we do design sessions, we include as much of the team as possible. In the early days, the entire team does the design sessions. I don't know if that's typical since I've been at Westwood and working almost the entirety of my professional career. I can't comment about other places, but it's certainly the way we found that it works out really well. And we look at each of the people, and we try to encourage them to come up with a creative part of the product and really focus their energies and their attentions on coming up with some great idea. So I guess, like I said, I don't know that it's particularly novel, but it works really well for us just to foster that conversation. Lots of books, lots of movies, play games together, have parties, spend time, really, more than anything else.
Just stimulate the thought.
Stimulating everything, because when we're at the office, you know, everybody's just so busy cranking, trying to get the next deadline done, trying to get the next piece of product done, that you don't spend the time getting to know the person across from you, finding out what they do, finding out they juggle, or whatever it might be that turns them on. And that's part of what really makes it special. The bigger the company gets, the harder that gets, so we try to push that down to the individual teams and try to encourage that belief structure within the teams.
I think one of the points you made there about somewhat a team-driven design is an excellent point. My animator the other day referred to working at Epic is like Lord of the Flies. And implying that it's total anarchy, but the truth of the matter is, I'd like to believe there's such a thing as somewhat of a controlled anarchy. I'm in the position of the company of lead designer, and when all is said and done, I do have the call of whether or not a feature is going to go in or how things are going to go. I have my own vision of the game, but that said, there are 20 people that I work with who are working on the game who have their own vision of what the game should be, and I'd be an idiot if I didn't consult them on design decisions and every single one of them is an incredibly intelligent person. Yeah. You know, many of them that I hired myself, and you hire people who are good gamers, people who play a lot of games, and dare I say it, sometimes it's good to hire people who don't play a lot of games, because they actually provide a little bit of good input from the other end of the spectrum. But I mean, as far as fostering creativity, there's a number of things that I think that are wrong with a lot of the larger businesses. We have 20 developers at our small studio, and the studios, there's no cubicles. We have no cubicle policy because that's just BS, if you ask me. No Dilbertizing the office, if you ask me. We also have offices where there's generally 2 to 4 people in there, no more and no less. So although I'm the lead designer, I'm in an office with 2 other people. And you know, sometimes there are management issues where you need to be on the phone or do an email, and you know, there are confidential things. And if you use your discretion, you can still do the majority of your work in front of the other people that are around you. The other thing that probably helped to inspire the whole Lord of the Flies comment by the animator was the fact that we don't really have set hours. And a lot of people gasp when I say that, you know, but we find that, you know, as a manager, how am I going to give a person crap if they're working at the office until 6 a.m. getting a lot of work done, and they happen to not be in at, you know, 9 a.m. the next day? Like, oh, you're bad, you stayed up all night and worked. It's just like, I can't fault them for that. So although we do have to encourage people to be in during the afternoons, you know, we strongly encourage mid to late afternoon hours. Overall, it works really well, and you know, we wind up with people who are on these insane revolving schedules where, you know, they'll be up for 20 hours and then sleep for 16, and who knows where everything's going to wind up. And I do have to bug people about coming into the office enough and making sure there's enough of that flow going on between people. But I think that's another factor I think helps a lot. You know, kind of having the open hours and keeping the open office environment. because that just encourages people to look at what other people are doing on their monitors. I believe there's like a momentum that happens where, you know, one person, look, you know, I programmed this cool effect, and the artist who's in the office with him goes, hey, look at what I did with your cool effect, and this snowballing thing winds up occurring where you wind up with magic, and that's the kind of magic that you need.
Well, I think that's important what you say about sort of the programmers doing effects and that kind of thing, because I think a lot of people, when they think of creativity, they think of, you know, a creative game mechanic or creative design, and there some games you think back over the past few years that people will, you know, so easily say that those were creative, but it seems you're talking also about, you know, programmers, you know, doing creative things that the gamer might not even realize are in the game, but really make, you know, a huge difference in just, you know, how tight the game is programmed or something artistic like that. So can you maybe talk about sort of what, do you value everything sort of equally in terms of creativity in your company? I mean, is it, you know, is design the most important thing creatively, or is everyone sort of equal?
Well, we're in a tricky position because we license our technology, and it's a significant part of our revenue, and it's something that can't be ignored. So oftentimes we have a new feature. The other day, one of our programmers programmed the cool procedural water that was in Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. You know, we walk through and it does the ripples and everything, and that's something that, you know, okay, that we have to find a place to put that in the environment, you know, just to show it off, just because it's cool, just because we can. And more often than not, you wind up doing that in a lot of situations where the technology drives the creation. And sometimes an artist will make something out of, you know, a programmer will make a tool, and an artist will make something completely crazy that the programmer never anticipated. And so there's a lot of back and forth with that, from my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I just build on the same thing that, you know, we're just finishing up Renegade now, and a great deal of the game was made years ago. Literally, it's been under production for a long time. But as we've started to make the tools for the consumers, and we're starting to make things a little easier to do, it's amazing. You know, the programmer says, oh, look, you know, I can do this, this, and this, and bang, you have a new kind of vehicle or something. And suddenly the artists come up with 5 variations on it. So there's an incredible amount of crosstalk there. And also, you know, one of the people you didn't mention is audio. We get some of our great ideas from the audio department because they'll do an audio effect, and they'll go, and I imagine I can see this happening while this, and they paint that picture for you.
Even for you guys, QA, because a lot of the designers come out of QA, right?
Yeah, a lot of our quality assurance guys will get. We have in our bug tracking system, and it's actually for EA worldwide. There's actually a way to give suggestions, and it's a very rigid process that makes sure it gets in front of the designers. And building on
inside the heart of every game tester is a game designer.
Game designer waiting to come out. Well, we Alice used the EA testing, you know, machine, and at first I was a little leery of it, but it actually was incredible because you did get a lot of very useful input from these guys, and as long as you're willing to accept that they have this ability to be creative in that sense.
That sort of leads to the question about, you know, how do you vet these creative ideas? Because, you know, you have these great ideas in the QA department, but how do they get up to you guys as the lead designers? I mean, is there any sort of set process? I mean, how does that work?
When the concept of Alice was formed, I set out to design, say, about 65–70% of the product, and I left the other 30% to be fleshed out while we were building the product, and we left enough room in every aspect of the game for everyone to have involvement, from the level designers to the sound guys to the testers. But we knew all along what the common theme of the product was, who the main characters were, what our weapons were, what the environments you were going to be going through were, what the look and feel of the thing was, and what it sounded like. We established really early on in this great, you know, concept stuff, what we were building, and so there was never a question of what's this product, but when it came time to innovate and do cool stuff and to come up with new ideas for weapons or for character interactions, there was room there to do that.
Yes, we do have a process, a couple. Well, actually, I think part of being a big company is you get lots of processes in place to take the place of 20 guys in a room. So it's actually really cool to have 20 guys in a room because you don't have to have a lot of process to get communication. In the case of the testing department, because our testers are all over the world, literally, and we had to have a really good, rigid process for the consumers to give us tests on our closed beta. So we have several different ways for that to happen. One is the consumers that are in the closed beta filter everything through a community manager, and there's a guy whose job it is to sort through that and give us a top 10. And that's how we ended up getting to it. So the test department says, here's our top 10 rants, here's our top 10 raves, you know, about how great the product is or how bad it is. And exactly, those types of things filter up pretty quickly. And what a lot of people didn't realize, I think a lot of the testers didn't realize, because the developers are so busy trying to get the product done, that they thought, oh, well, nobody's going to read these. And then, you know, I'd walk back in the test department and go walk up to Chad and say, oh, that was a great idea, by the way. You know, they're going to implement that in the next build. And it's like, wait, you read it? I go, yeah, the whole management team read it. We discussed it at lunch. You know, we're going to definitely make sure that gets in there. So
that's why you do well.
They just feel, yeah, they feel great about it because, you know, somebody listened. You can't do everything, but I'll tell you something. If your test department tells you there's 10 things wrong with the game, and number 1 is like in bold with underlines, you better pay attention.
I agree. Well, I mean, it's always been my philosophy that, you know, 20 people over a 2-year period are going to come out with infinitely cooler ideas than one person locked in a room for 3 months writing a 4,000-page design document. Much like Mark Cerny said earlier, I agree with a lot of what he said. That said, there still needs to be like the guy, you know, the final call guy, you know, the guy who still has the vision but is willing to, and in my situation, filter, you know, his vision through everybody on the team. And I mean, if we implement an idea that I have and the team starts playing it and the programmers all tell me that it's no fun and it sucks, what am I going to sit there and go, no, you're wrong, I'm a game god, you have to listen to me? Like no, you know, they're going to change it.
I'm the GM, you have to know.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's rare instances where you have to force stuff like that, you know, and what's the saying about, you know, attracting flies with honey than lemon and vinegar or something, you know? It's better to be positive and you know, than just shoot people down.
So now you're talking a lot about sort of the size of the teams now, and you guys, all your projects, I mean, are, you know, used to be when Lou was, you know, starting doing games. I mean, you were programming them, and, you know, sometimes doing the game all by yourself. And
one, sometimes two.
Yeah, and now you're looking at teams that are, you know, 20 to 40 people sometimes.
80.
80 on a team. Okay.
Welcome to PSWs.
Wow. Really? So I mean, tell me a little bit about that. I mean, does that inhibit creativity at all when you're, you know, up to that number of people? I mean, is it just more potential? Because I mean, there's more potential creativity there, but I mean, whether it's unleashed is a whole other question.
Yeah. So I don't know about inhibiting, I suppose, to some extent. So I think there's a dynamic. There's like a logarithmic curve or some sort of horrendous thing about communication. So every time you add another person, the amount of time you need to spend communicating is going up logarithmically. So at some point you need to have more people around just to keep everybody communicating. So you add more people, which of course causes more need to communicate, and so it gets really out of control. And Gordon and a lot of the guys that have a lot of experience building these huge games helped us out a lot when it came to structure, to break the team down into very discrete units that have very discrete functionality, and they have these massive meetings with tons of people that you would, logically I would just say these are got to be ineffective, but they're absolutely necessary because there's so many moving parts, so much detail, so many groups of people working so hard to get their particular ideas. So I don't know that it inhibits the creativity. I think each one of those nodes has a lot of creative feedback and it gets going, but it absolutely necessitates an incredible amount of overhead when it comes to communication and process. And that's kind of what I was saying. I'm just starting a new project now, and my team's under 20. I think it's like 15 people, and it's just glorious, right? Because you know, if we want to make a change, we're just all get in the room and go, okay, we're going to change direction, and we can, you know. And my God, if we tried to do that on Earth and beyond, it would just explode because there's so many people that would be confused so quickly. So I think you lose the ability to quickly correct. So you have to be much more rigid about your design process. But I don't think you lose the creativity. I think you just have to be much more process-oriented about how to filter that through your system.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of what I say here only refers to the fact that I work with 20 people, and you know, in a larger environment of 80 developers.
85 technically on Earth and Beyond right now. Yeah,
it's a hell of a burn rate.
Yeah. No.
You kind of need. Oh, did you get that memo? You didn't get the memo? Yeah. Or the gun's going to be blue now. Yeah. Oh, okay. I imagine you get a lot of that.
You know, I've experienced actually all ends of that spectrum coming from
id.
I mean, from id was a team of 9 guys who, when I first came on, was in their halcyon days, very communicative, and there was a lot of creative energy flowing among all the members of the teams. But as time went on, the company sort of fractured into programmers, artists, and level designers, and evidence of that is Quake, which until it came time to print the text on the back of the box, didn't actually have game design. Until we needed to explain to the audience what this product was, no one really knew. And we had one group of guys working on medieval stuff, and one group of guys working on lava levels, and one group of guys working on futuristic stuff. So the small team, even in that situation, managed to break down. And then the other end of that spectrum is a product I witnessed recently where big licensed IP, and they assigned multiple producers to facilitate that communication, but those producers each decided they were going to be the designer, and the team grew from 30 to 60 and quickly exploded, and then grew again and exploded again, and the product, was a year late and many, dollars over budget, and it's just, and I think a lot of the failing in both of those examples, though, came from the fact that there was no solid core design team assigned to the beginning of the product to establish exactly what it was they were building.
And actually building on that, I mean, that's something that we've actually had a hard time learning as we're trying to start products within electronic arts. I know this is supposed to be a talk about big companies, right? So you don't get any bigger than electronic arts, and it's because the people who run the company are gamers, and they know games, it makes it a very invasive corporate structure when it comes to creativity, as opposed to when we were part of Viacom, where they just looked at us and go, "What do you do?" That was real easy because you just had to run the finances up and down. You didn't have to sweat the
So now you have to sell the idea.
Now you actually have to go to people who know what they're talking about.
Right.
Sometimes.
Well, I would say they do. I respect them a great deal. So it's a lot harder to sell that idea because you have to get to a very clear, concise concept that is going to market well. The sales guys kind of get it. They go, "Oh, okay, I get that." There was a big article in Game Developers Magazine about the hook. I don't know that it's the hook, but it is the way to communicate your vision. If you can't communicate your vision, you're dead, because the organization's too big and the people are too knowledgeable for you to just say, "Oh, I'll just go wing it." It's like, well, you know what? We got lots of places to put our money, and we're not going to give it to you unless you can tell us why this is going to be great. And yeah, okay, you ship games. So did everybody else in this company. It doesn't matter. So you better be good at communicating your idea.
I think that's
early. You got to do it immediately.
We found a really cool trick for communicating the vision of the product early on with Alice, which was to create this 30-second cinematic style trailer. And anytime anyone lost sight of what we were creating, including the developers, which this is great because they would go, "Oh, I've been working too long and I can't do anymore, and I don't know what we're building." You'd pop the tape in and they'd go, "Ah," and then the next thing you know, they're like, "This is what we're making," and they go back to work, and it was great, and it was 30 seconds of music and animation, and boom, they had it.
It's propaganda.
It was propaganda. We brainwashed them.
Hey, good.
It's filter. It's filters, right?
Yeah,
That's what
totally.
It is. The way we were talking earlier, you're the filter, right? So when you're the filter, that's easy.
Well,
Everybody creates stuff and you filter it.
At the core of every project, you need one guy who's just convinced that this game's going to be the be-all, end-all, and anytime you want to grab him in the hallway and talk to him about it, he'll run his mouth for hours on end about it. And if you don't have that, then you have everybody's complete and total package vision of what it is, and you wind up with something that's very fragmented. I mean, we run into a lot of instances where we have to kind of balance between the two, where we don't have, and again, as far as fostering creativity, we have like an overall goal of these are the environments that we're doing in the game, and a vague idea of what they're going to look like. And within that, I mean, the artists wind up with a lot of elbow room, and in a lot of instances, too much elbow room, to the point where I'm saying, wait, there's no people in this area. What are you doing? And so one day an artist will be like, "Hey, this weekend I made this laser gun," and I'm like, "Well, it looks cool and it matches, so I guess we're having a laser gun, cool." And you got to do that, but within certain restraints, where if the gun completely doesn't fit into the story or whatever, there's times you have to say, okay, we're gonna, got to put the kibosh on that, and the artist cries a little, and you got to make them feel better and move on and stay productive.
It's not just the artist though, too. I mean, I still remember it's like you're walking down the hall, and one of the things we had decided to not get to in Renegade was flying vehicles. Right. And I walk by the hall and I look over and I just sort of walk into Greg's office, the programmer, and he's like trying to turn off the computer real fast. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "No, nothing." And I'm like, "You don't look like an Apache, man." But
that can be really dangerous in the wrong instance.
It can. In this case, it was post live, so it was a post Gold Master, so it was perfect.
You wind up with somebody like that in your team.
Oh God, yeah, it'll drive you crazy.
Like this game's gonna have a grappling hook, and you know what? I'm gonna make a grappling hook whether you say or not. It's like, oh, wait a minute here. You got to be careful, because people, if you don't do something to say, okay, grappling hooks are cool, but if there's a problem, if there's a conflict, it's like, no, you need to be coding the deneuralizer right now. What are you doing coding the grappling hook? Then
right.
You got to still keep people prioritized, and in the environment that we create, it's tough, and it requires a lot of the guy from Office Space with the coffee cup visits, and I get a lot of crap about that, but it's part of my job to stand behind people, and if they all tab quickly, they're either looking at indecent content or building an Apache.
Hopefully the latter.
Yeah.
You talked about the balance, and I mean, American knows this well from id, sort of the balance between creativity and sometimes technology too, because this wandering through the wilderness idea of we're going to wait for creative inspiration, make sure we want to make the best product. At the same point, there are other technologists that really want their technology to be out there as fast as possible. So is that ever, a balance that you have to worry about, sort of balancing out the creativity and the design with sort of the technology?
I have like the utmost respect for people willing right now to go out on a limb, technology-wise and design-wise. There's a lot of games out there right now that are great examples of people who are successful and winning at that. But I also think that there's a certain amount of learning that gets lost whenever you reinvent technology. And that we're getting to the point now where these engines are reusable to the point that you can make multiple different types of games out of a single engine, and you can refine what those games play like, feel like, look like over a certain number of iterations. And to an extent, it's my company is actually focusing on not worrying about the technology and just all content.
Why American? What engine would you be referring to?
I don't know. We haven't made that decision yet, Cliff. Oh, okay. Don't pressure me.
We'll talk later.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that the industry as a whole is kind of waking up to the fact that although technology is important, you're far better off to be content creators, media creators, entertainment creators. That's where the big win is. And at the end of the day, it's very hard. We were talking earlier about the not invented here syndrome. It's very hard to know, is it the not invented here syndrome? Is somebody really do they really not have the functionality in the engine that they're looking at? And one of the things that we talk about a lot within Electronic Arts at a creative level is how do we leverage being such a large organization? Because it can be an incredibly debilitating thing if you don't use it as the one market advantage you have. So when you look at the tools and technology, the motion capture stuff, the skin techniques, all this stuff that's going on, you look at somebody like Tiburon who uses all the tools that are created, and they big borrow and steal every single part they possibly can within the organization, and then they build whatever they need to build to get to their vision. Well, they've got a small group of people spending a little bit of money and generating tons of revenue. That's a great model. We, unfortunately, over the last few years have been in this position of building this engine because when we started it, there wasn't anything that really did what we wanted. And we thought, this is Renegade. And we thought, we'll get there. This is a bitch. It was really hard to get there. And now we're there, and it's like, okay, well, maybe we'll use another engine.
Did that affect the creativity on the project, though, at all?
Did it what?
Affect the creativity because you were working on this?
Yeah, it absolutely did. The game is not as good looking as it could have been for certain if we had started with a finished engine. So it certainly hurt the art quality from that. There were decisions made and certain things that were done to it that were, the product is several years old in that sense. What's amazing is that it is a competitive product, even though, sort of the vision and everything else was locked on it quite a ways back. So it definitely, it definitely sort of set it back a bit. What's wonderful about, especially the multiplayer side of it, is because we're able to actually patch it because people are playing multiplayer. They have a connection. We're able to actually quickly adapt
and add in the flying vehicles.
Yeah, adding the flying vehicles, all sorts of things that we wanted to have, and so I think we're kind of getting our way out of that mess. But it was definitely very, very challenging. It's part of the biggest reason why that title took so long to finish. And now we have other options that we're investigating because it's like so other people have caught up to some of the ideas we want. But even that's not a slam dunk because there's always something that you need to do regardless. So like you said, you have to customize it to your own game style to some extent.
One of the things we were talking about this morning was the fact that when Ridley Scott sets out to create a new film, he doesn't all of a sudden up and go, well, that Thomas Edison guy did a really terrible job of inventing the light bulb. I'm going to reinvent that, and the camera, and the film, and it doesn't happen that way. And the fact that we've got these tools that are now, he did invent the light bulb, didn't he? I hope so. We've got these tools that we can use to facilitate creation of games. That much easier means we can focus on just the content, and I think that's really where things are going to be going. Leave people like Sweeney and Carmack to.
Yeah, I don't want to go on a sales pitch here.
That's right.
But blatant sales pitch.
Well, the thing is I've come to realize in the years I've been doing this that game development isn't just about making a game. It's about making as cool a game as possible with X people, with X dollars, and X months. And you got to pick your risks and assess those accordingly. And engine licensing isn't for everybody. It's not the be-all, end-all, but you know what? It's a good option. So.
Well, I'd go right out and say immediately, if you're thinking of doing a game and it can be realized in an engine, license it. Really? Don't go build an engine to do what Quake does or what Unreal does. That's just almost beyond silly. So
I'm sorry, just one point I wanted to make there. One thing that I'm dying to see happen, and it's coming up eventually, and it's not going to happen overnight. But it's just what happens when we get to the point where graphics are photorealistic. Everything looks real. Okay, now what? Because there's so many decisions that we make about the kind of games we make where, like I said about the water earlier, it's like you put the water in the level because nobody's ever seen water like that. It's like, okay, well, imagine in front of you, you have, the graphics chase is over. Now what? And not a lot of people are asking themselves that. People you're getting by on a lot of games right now, but the fact that gamers haven't seen a lot of the nifty particles that you've done or bump mapping or whatever, and we're starting to get close to that point where you can't rely on that stuff anymore. And what are you going to do then? I mean,
you could release a game today using Quake 3 technology, which is now, how many years old, and still have it be extremely successful.
Yeah, Medal of Honor.
On Medal of Honor. There's a good example of it. So
awesome.
Certainly not as important as it used to be. It's all kind of catching up.
Right.
Well, I think that you bring up a good point because style is really important.
Yeah.
Photorealism is a style. And once you get to the point that you have photorealism, you're back to where the directors and the photographers and the cinematographers and all the other people come on board.
Cell shading's the latest fad for that.
Well, but that's there are going to be gimmicks. There's going to be things that are fun. But at the end of the day, you should pick something that fits your fiction that works with everything you're doing. The visual style of AIAS was brilliant. It was just a beautiful product. And so, it kind of is close to Quake because it was so dark and creepy. But you could have easily have been something fun and lighthearted and still use that same technology base. There was no reason things have to be dark in Quake. It just happens to look good.
And that's we are going to utilize off-the-shelf technology for Oz, and it is allowing, that's the follow-up to Alice, and that is allowing us to focus a lot of time and energy on investigating what that rendering style, what that world is going to look like. And that's a really big piece of selling someone into the immersion of that space. And I've been going out and finally settled on this really cool way of rendering the world out that is not like cell animation, and it's not like anything that's been gone before, and it's not even photorealistic, but it's just amazing and can be done with off the shelf.
It requires really good art direction.
Yeah, it's all about the art direction, the artists.
Well, in Blade Runner, we put pieces together that were all pre-rendered, so effectively whatever the 3D software could do, we could do. And the hardest part about that wasn't getting realistic looking stuff. It was getting stuff that looked like Ridley Scott's film. And this guy's brilliant, this took a long time and a lot of effort of reconstructing the process that led to the visualization of the film. And you mentioned earlier about reinventing the cameras. Guess what? Once the technology gets to the point where photorealistic is easy, then you've got a lot of other problems and a lot of other challenges. And it's going to come down to great consistent art direction. So when you get games like Age of Empires and stuff that have great consistency across them, they really just stand out as great pieces of product.
We're kind of guilty of this as far as making space dungeons and it seems like almost every other game designer out there is always trying to make Aliens and Predator. Just make it look like Aliens and put some pipes in, and that's cool and everything. It's just you want to get to the point where you kind of define your own visual style and it stands on its own, so that should you want to extend the IP into other things, you have the option of something that looks more distinct. And again, not to stroke you too much there with Alice, but that's something you did well.
That's great. Thank you.
We're talking a lot about, licenses now with Blade Runner and, American, obviously licensing in some ways, about, taking a story at least as inspiration. And sequels are another thing that sort of, relate to that. And Lou has a lot of, experience with that with CNC products and Clip with some of the Unreal stuff. How does that, Sid this morning, he was talking about how with the dinosaur game, he was thinking, well, turn-based worked for Civ, so, we'll try it on this. How do you, if something works and you're going to build sort of a sequel or, or same with a license, that environment, the way it is sort of set up works, how does that affect your creativity for what you're doing? I guess sequels and licenses aren't directly related, but does that make it harder, or does that give you sort of more potential to
I'll kick
innovate?
off on this one because I've done The Lion King, a bunch of other stuff too. So I think that it's really important when you're working with a property that you're trying to build equity in that property. So if you look at a game as a parasite onto a property, well, I'm just going to take whatever they did and recreate that as a game, you're making a fundamental mistake. Nobody wants to take their great thing that they enjoyed, whether it's a book or whether it's a movie or even if it's previous games. Like one of the things in Command and Conquer Renegade is we had to be very consistent with the visuals of our game and the consistency of the guys. So people say, well, the Nod troopers act kind of stupid. It's like, well, yeah, because in the RTS, they acted kind of stupid, and we wanted that. There's better level characters that are much smarter. It wasn't that we couldn't do that, but there's a consistency. You have to pay tribute to your franchise. And the bright colors, the lighting, the guys running around in red suits. What kind of a soldier runs around in a red suit? It's not exactly good for life expectancy.
Yeah, that expectation of I'm going to see CNC from the ground level. So
yeah, you got to build that.
It's got to look like what I imagine.
It's got to be what you imagine. So getting back to films and stuff, the first thing that I do when I was working on Blade Runner, because I really was kind of myself and David Leary and I guess Donnie Miele for a lot of the art stuff, but a lot of the visualization, we really worked together as a team to try to come up with these great sort of arguments for why this product is going to expand the idea of what Blade Runner is, as opposed to just sort of hang on to it. Whether you're doing a sequel or I think even a new property, it's easier to have, you have some place to start when you have a property that's already existed, a sequel or an existing property. But it's harder to be consistent with your filters. So the more body of work you have, the harder it gets. Every next CNC gets more difficult to build, to be cutting edge, to look as good as the next game that doesn't care what the previous thing was.
And the larger your fan base gets, the more they expect out of it.
And they want it, yeah, they want it to be consistent. I mean, it's like the people who do films and they check to see if frame 1 and frame 10, if the water in the glass went up or down, these consistency freaks. Right. Well, guess what? Our fans are just like that, and they're not wrong. They're right. They want that consistency. It's really important. It's about branding, it's about identity, and you need to really be careful about what you're adding to things. You don't just go and potato head in anything you want and throw it in there. You don't.
So balancing that tradition and change, means that become a big concern for you?
Absolutely. Right. It's all about figuring out what that is, and the marketing departments and the PR and everything help us a lot. They talk to the fans. What's CNC about, and what do you think? What do you feel about the product line? And you want to make sure you're giving them an experience that builds upon that franchise and grows it. Because if you don't do that, the franchise actually diminishes. You have that sort of inverted pyramid.
One of the things I've noticed when we're going out to talk to publishers recently, because we're going out and pitching our ideas, is we'll talk to them about the franchise properties that they've picked up from movie studios. And one of the really depressing things that's happening that we're trying to counter with our business model is this idea of selling the licensed IP to the highest bidder. So say the next, whatever Spider-Man thing comes out, so they'll take that to a list of big, domestic publishers and say, okay, who's going to give us the most amount of money for this? And what the movie studios don't know, that we know that we should stop doing, is that they immediately take that licensing money they paid and take it out of the game budget. Right. And even when they don't do that, there's these really strange expectations that are set when it comes to film properties, where I've seen licensed IP like this blow up so many times internally at different companies, and it's really just kind of a bad mistake, because they stop focusing on making a fun game. And you're right about, you need to make sure that you're supporting that brand as opposed to just kind of leeching onto it. And we go out to a lot of people who, they'll say, well, we're building this game, and the gameplay is not fun, but we don't care because we know it's going to sell 1 million units because it's attached to this piece of IP. That's bad. I mean, why are we doing that? What business are we in if we are producing bad games just to ride on the coattails of the marketing campaign of a film? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Over my dead body, I'll ever do a licensed property. And you can quote that.
When you're doing, if you ever do a sequel for a game, is that something?
Are you doing another Unreal?
That's the property that we created, though. That's the point that I'm getting at.
Right.
We get to say what happens in the Unreal universe, and luckily we've been sloppy enough with the universe where
anything goes.
Well, it kind of allows us a little bit of elbow room and freedom, where it's kind of like, and I hate to compare it to Final Fantasy because it's such a larger selling series, but each game stands on its own. What's in common about Final Fantasy from each game to each game? Okay, it's a great RPG with great visuals and maybe a chocobo. And you look at Unreal, and okay, there's going to be guns, there's going to be pretty environments, and there's probably going to be Scar at some point in the environment. And I had an interesting discussion with Scott Miller of 3D Realms a while back, and he was talking about licensed properties. And unless your licensed property is so huge, like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, or obscure enough, like a Turok license, and AIAS is something that's so well known, everybody knows it. Then that adds value. But if you're licensing, an IP of something that's moderately well known, then you're all actually just, in my opinion, putting a kind of a glass ceiling on the amount of sales that game could potentially achieve, because it's like, I didn't see the movie, I'm not going to pick that game up. You'd have to have a movie that like everybody saw in order for it to really broaden your market, and I believe in many instances it actually limits it. There's, you know, when you have a new and original IP, there's no preconceived notions with it, and that's why it gets tricky with sequels, just like you said. I mean, you know, and that's why I'm fortunate that we've been sloppy, where, you know, as long as it's pretty and has guns and maybe that alien, then we're good. So,
but it's really challenging for the marketing departments of these organizations, because every time you add a new product that has great ideas but doesn't fit within the previous defined container, they're in real trouble, right? Because it's like, oh God, we got to redefine this. So it's a big challenge.
So publishers want
even their own properties.
They want to have their cake and eat it too. You know, it's like if at some point in the future we decide, okay, we're not going to do Unreal games anymore, we're going to do some other, you know, universe, and we go to a publisher and we go, okay, you can have Game X or you can have Unreal. You know, and then it's going to, what do you think the publisher is going to do, right? I mean, in that situation, you kind of have to just draw the line and say, okay, this is the game we're doing, we did Unreal, do you want it or not? And put your foot down, because if you even put out the idea of, you know, you can have, you know, a new Unreal game, then of course the publisher is going to go for that. You know, it's their knee-jerk reaction. It's the frog and the scorpion. It's their nature. You know.
Well, and one other thing I think that the games industry needs to do is, I mean, I think, and we're slowly doing this, is recognize exactly how creative and how influential this industry is, and stop worrying about licensing. I mean, obviously there's always going to be room to license IP from the film world, but now start working on developing concepts in our world that work as film and as comic book and as toys and as, and a lot of people you talk to say that's not invented here. We're a game publisher. We absolutely will not get in that business, and it's really a mistake, because we could be going both ways. And there's a lot of outlet for the type of ideas that we're coming up with outside of just the traditional games market.
In regards to creativity and gamers, do you think that, I mean, gamers, do they value or do they undervalue sort of creativity? Because, I mean, there have been a lot of really creative products that people have talked about that, you know, haven't done that well. But then there are other products that are really creative that do well. I mean,
think it depends on the game and the amount of creativity in it. You know, there's some games that I swear are just weird to be weird. You know, it's just like, and what's
creativity?
Okay, you did something different. Congratulations, nobody bought it. And then there's the ones that are different and good. You know, different just to be different isn't always a good thing.
I think we're in the process of feeling out a number of set genres. I mean, obviously there's sports, there's adventure, there's action, there's different types of gameplay that we know work, and we're going to continue to invent those. But, you know, to an extent, we need to stay within the realms of what we know works, while slowly exploring new avenues from time to time. If you ask gamers what they want to play, they'll often come back and be like, well, I want a space monkey volleyball, you know, big-breasted action-adventure hero, you know, lava climber. I mean, you're like...
Chesty spelunker.
And then once you deliver that to them, they'll go, I don't want to play this, I just want to go back and play SSX, you know, and they're like, ah! So, you know, they're very
is that
fickle.
in some ways, I mean, iteration then? I mean, is that...
Yeah, it's all, I think it's about iteration, you know, exploration of our genre. I mean, this is such a young industry, and there's so many lessons still to be learned about what we can do and things we can borrow from other industries. I mean, right now is a really cool, exciting time for us to be eventually, you know, finally the level of graphics are catching up with what people expect to see on their televisions. They no longer have to, you know, Middle America no longer has to use its imagination to fill in the blanks of these on these graphics. So, you know, now we can actually start exploring what these games are about and, you know, what's fun.
I agree. I think you know, innovation for the sake of innovation, you know, in some instances is good and in some instances is bad. I mean, you talk to a lot of industry pundits, and you know, and this is it's really easy for me to sit here and say this because, you know, we basically ripped off Quake. But that said, you know, what we did was we looked at Quake, we looked at what worked in Quake, and did something slightly different and slightly improved. And sometimes that's all you need. There's a tendency to overthink and overdesign. You know, like not everybody in this room is going to come up with the next Tetris, except, you know, Will Wright, of course. But that's Will, and you know, that's cool, and he's, you know, he's great at that. But I mean, I think there's something to be said, and I'll probably get lambasted for this, but for taking something that just has been done before and doing it better. Is that so bad? There, I said it, right? I mean,
and you know, one of the things that we've actually become quite known for as well as successful at is taking something that's well established, like strategy games, you know, and then just putting that little tweak in it that makes them more entertaining. The adventure games, I can go on and on, you know, even Monopoly, we added the multiplayer over the internet and some 3D graphics. But the fact that you could trade was core to Monopoly, and a lot of Monopoly games didn't have trading before that. Yeah, go figure. But when you really look at it in a global sense and where the products are going and all, I think it really comes down to we keep defining products by genres based on the history of gameplay and how they work and everything. And the consumers, as we get wider and wider and more people know what a controller is or what a keyboard and a mouse are, they don't really, I mean, the only reason they define the genres the same way we do is because as an industry we keep redefining these genres and we keep iterating on products. There's nothing wrong with doing something that's been done better, because that continues to feed it.
You already have this hurdle of a person having to figure out, you know, how did you decide to make your game control compared to the other game designers? And if you can pick up the game and, you know, have a predefined setup, and, you know, and sure, the game could be a lot different than a previous, you know, for first-person shooter type game example, you know.
It doesn't have to be, yeah, so I guess I'm saying, in effect, better to be better is fine, but it's great when there's some innovative feature of the things, and it doesn't have to be the interface. It could be. In fact, I think changing interfaces is actually pretty punishing on the users. You really want to have, where we want to get to is something where there's a ubiquitous type interface that everybody just kind of gets immediately, and you don't have to actually be trained on it, and then you can get to the fun. And then our genres won't be first-person shooter, adventure game. They'll be horror, comedy, you know, drama, and that is entertainment. If you ask somebody in a just a very broad sense, you're going to have some entertainment tonight. What do you want? Unless they're really geeked out gamers, they're not going to start talking about real-time strategy games or things like that. They're going to talk about the emotional experience they want to feel.
So the creativity in the interface, I mean, is almost going to go away then, because I mean there would be a standard interface.
So the creativity is to eliminate.
Right. One at a time. I think as an interesting thought experiment, if Silicon Valley was to burn down tomorrow and no new chips were manufactured, and we were stuck with a standard, if everybody had to develop for the PlayStation 2 for the next 5 years, man, games you would get standardized interfaces, you'd get those genres, you would get, I mean, it would be amazing, because we would no longer be chasing technology. People would reiterate to the point where all of a sudden we would establish this is this type of game, and I'm going to build this thing but better this time, and it's the same sort of thing that's happened with Hollywood, you know. I mean, there are genres, and every once in a while someone goes out and experiments, and 9 times out of 10 it'll flop and fail, but every once in a while you get an American Beauty, and you're like, wow, you know, where'd that come from? And I think a lot of that has to do with the standardization of the storytelling techniques, of the camera stuff that they do. I mean, everything about Hollywood to an extent is standardized. There's a language there that they speak, and we're still learning that language across the board for games, for interface, for dialogue, for everything.
And it's changing.
And it's changing.
So it's constantly changing.
I mean, our screen is constantly changing, and our audience is changing as well. People are, you know, now 20 years into it, growing up, you know, having played video games, and now their kids are being introduced to it for the first time, and it's ever evolving.
There's a quote that I love. I can't remember who said it. I think it may have been Randy Pitchford. It's just the interface to your game is an obstacle, not a feature.
Absolutely.
And you know, just keep it simple, stupid. I mean, don't reinvent it. One of the experiences we had shipping Unreal Tournament for PlayStation 2 was going through the Sony interface Nazi people. And if you shipping console games, you know, when we had previously shipped PC games, you're like, we'll do whatever the hell we want with the interface. There's nobody telling us what to do. But you know, you get this list back from Sony, and just like, and they have their guidelines. It's like having a covenant in your neighborhood where you can't paint your house pink or something. It's like the X button has to advance, and you know, at first I was like, who the hell are? And then I was like, oh, this makes sense. I mean, can we just like have an industry-wide, you know, like don't, you know, reinvent the interface. This button should generally kind of do this, and dare I say it.
I think there's a lot of designers that make the mistake of frustration equaling fun. So you play a lot of games where, as the game progresses, and this is I don't know, maybe I'm completely confused here, but I think as a rule that games that get more and more difficult as they progress might be a little wrong, because it's the only entertainment medium. I mean, you're not watching a movie and all of a sudden the chair starts shocking you as you get towards the end, or like the book changes language at chapter 40 to Spanish, and you're like, wait, you know. And it's interesting. We are trying to create interactive experiences for the living room for people to enjoy and sit down and play. But a lot of designers, I think, take frustration and think that equals fun, and it's not true. And that's the same thing that happens with interfaces.
It fosters this mentality where it's like, if you can't beat my game, then you're a loser.
Exactly.
Like, and that's just like the most awful mentality you could ever get into.
And almost,
it's like, I want you to beat the game. What are you talking about?
And designers really, I've met a lot of people who are like that, and I don't really think. You know, I think as a big giant mistake, that's one huge mistake we make that doesn't allow us to reach mass market.
Games are just too long.
The games torture you the further you get into them.
And then some of these more, you know, open-ended games like The Sims, I mean, perhaps that's part of the reason why they're successful, is because it doesn't get, you know, harder.
And open-ended, I mean, the other thing is people. So I think that as our market widens, as people get older, not everybody has the dedicated amount of entertainment time to dedicate to, you know, first of all, 45-minute install or something ridiculous like that. So they have to be able to get into the entertainment quickly, be entertained, and then be able to leave or stay. And that's the real challenge as designers. You want to talk about a real creative challenge. How do you make something compelling for somebody who's going to dabble in it 10 minutes at a time over a week, to the other guy who's just decided, you know, this week I'm going to take the time off, I'm going to play the game for 50 hours. You know, there's a very radically different set of consumer there, and that's a better creative challenge to be tackling than whether or not the mouse going up and down inverts the movement, which, well, anyways.
I'm just tired.
That's a religion of its own.
Yeah. I'm just tired of padding in games.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it's like, the focus group said this game should be 20 hours, and the game's currently 10 hours, so let's just put a maze in.
Hey, actually, that's a good one. Can we get all of the press to never ask how long this game is again?
Yeah, games.
Just ask how good it is.
Seriously.
How much fun did you have?
But, I mean, we've seen,
I'm so tired of that
like the
question.
games, you know, Max Payne or
Who's
you know,
proud?
Medal of Honor.
Who's
I mean,
proud
there's
of taking? Who's proud of having 80 hours to spend? I'm sorry. I just, like,
Well, and then you get the guy, and you know, people say, well, can you know, hey, we want a game. Well, how long am I going to have to take to play it? I'm like, oh, yeah, you're going to want to finish that, aren't you? Well, sometime in this natural lifetime. Oh, wow, I guess it's pretty long.
and here's one of the things I think is a fundamental problem with making your game too long and ramping up the difficulty towards the end is like, you know, if you play the first game and you don't beat it and the sequel comes out in the store shelves, you're at the store with your wife and you're like, oh, hey, look, this. And she's like, you didn't even finish the first one. You're not getting that one. It's like having somebody finish your game is not a bad thing.
That's a great thing. I mean, it is really frustrating to have, and it's a question. I went on the tour for Renegade, and it's a question. I mean, I was asked endlessly. Well, how much gameplay is there? Well, it's a really kind of interesting game. And it's lots of fun, and you can spend a lot of time running around in circles if you want. You want to spend 80 hours, you can do that, but that's not the point. It's fun, and there's plenty. There's plenty for your $50. You're going to be well entertained.
Yeah, in the multiplayer. I mean, it's. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
the multiplayer is worth the price.
yeah, and that's.
I would love to see some games come out that are $20 that are like 4 hours long and just jam-packed like a single-player first-person shooter. It's just 4 hours, it's $20, and it takes somebody 6 months to make, and that's it, and I'm done. And you know, I don't have to invest, you know, weeks, and there's just so much padding. You know, there's the whole repetition thing. You know, it's like, oh, you completed this task, so now you have to do it 2 more times. It's like, why? Just because you want to make your game seem longer? Like, no, I don't have the time for this. You know,
Play all the levels backwards.
Yeah, right. Now you have to fight every boss you fought up until that point. That's my other favorite.
Let's talk a little bit about sort of the corporate aspect of this and production, because it's, you know, part of the description of this panel. The milestone system in game development that you guys are all sort of familiar with. Can you talk maybe a little bit about how that affects creativity for, you know, milestone? Because I mean, some, you know, people would say, well, we just had a whole bunch of money on the front end and we could, you know, take as long as we wanted to make the game. That would be great, and that would allow us to be the most creative. But then other games, you know, when you have milestones you have to meet, I mean, how does that affect creativity?
Well, I don't know that having a bunch of money up front and being able to do whatever you want, as long as you want, is going to make a better product.
Right. Okay.
I think quite the opposite, actually. That's just going to waste a lot of money. Okay. So I think
just some accountability, I mean, in terms
well,
of...
no, I mean, so we're on a monthly milestone delivery internal. So this is not something that we're doing because anybody's mandated. It's something that, as a team, we all sat down, and these are guys who built 100-something games together, and we all sat down and we said, okay, what are we going to do different this time? And every time, it's a different process. I don't know about you guys, but we still haven't figured it out. And if everybody has, write a book, please. But we sit down and we said, what are we going to do different this time? It's like, okay, every day the game gets played. So you have to build it every day. Every month, you present it to another part of the organization. Why do you present it? Well, because when you go to present something and you say, okay, what's it about? It forces you to think about what it's about. It forces you to focus your attention on what the game is really, what's exciting about it. And you get feedback from other smart people who can tell you, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Is this working well or not working well? And you know what? You don't lie to yourself so much. And I think, at least for Westwood, I'll air the dirty laundry as it were. You know, we weren't really in that process. And that's why Renegade took 4 years more than anything else. It's just because, you know, we weren't in a methodology of being rigid about, we must keep this thing playing all the time. We must be playing it. We must be exposing it to other people in the company, and we need to be bandstanding it. And, you know, it doesn't have to take a long time to get a great gaming experience. You just need to identify it early and really build upon that core, that kernel. So
the creativity doesn't necessarily have to come right at the front end, but I mean, it can come.
No, I think you need to. Well, I think you actually, it's to some extent, I think you define what your game will ever be in the first few critical months, because you're saying, here's like your trailer, right? That's exactly what we're doing. It's a very common practice, but it's a great practice, because if you can imagine a thing, you can build it. Mm-hmm. But if you build the thing and then say, imagine how much better it will be with 5 more months of art time. Well, I don't know. What does that mean? I think what you'll get is 5 more months of different art. But it won't necessarily be any better, and it certainly won't play to a vision any better unless you just get lucky. So I don't think that having milestones is a bad thing at all. I think it's actually a critical thing, especially when you have a lot of money you're spending on something, so you can have some internal credibility and some checks and balances.
I think, I've seen both ends of that spectrum. Again, id with the runaway, just crazy, technology-driven, not quite sure what we were building kind of madness until somebody finally put their foot down and said, okay, we got to ship something, And the other end, like Alice, we milestoned out, and we didn't let the milestones drive us so much creatively. I mean, we did a lot of the macro creative process at the very beginning and left a lot of the micro decisions for the actual development process. But I think the one thing milestones do help us with in our industry is the fact that on a 2-year development cycle, people lose track of exactly what it is that they're working on. They will tend to put things off because they go, well, geez, I've got 24 more months. I don't have to do this today. Or, and then they start working on Apaches or surfing the internet for whatnot. Yeah. So, I mean, I think in that sense, milestones are important to keep everybody in lockstep, because a lot of projects will go off track, and I've seen that, because you don't quite know where you are. And that also just goes right back to knowing where you are means you have to, it necessitates having to know what the product is you're building before you start off. And it seems like really basic, but boy, I mean, there's so many times I've seen teams that try to start off without even knowing what they're doing. They're like, well, we'll just build a great engine and see what happens. And it doesn't work that way anymore.
I think the point is, and I don't know if you would disagree, because you're certainly saying the same thing, which is do the creativity up front, identify what it is you want to build, and then get to the process. And how are you going to build it? I mean, if you don't have a good process for that, and you just let it kind of meander and wander, you waste a lot of time. A lot of time.
Yeah, and you can't really evolve into, you can't have
there's tons of evolution that happens in game design. You cannot help it, because as you try to reach that vision, you'll come up with compromises, you'll evolve those compromises, and you might even evolve past the vision in some cases. You might add a feature or an idea that comes up that's great. You have to have a living design. It's not that the design is locked in stone and never changes. That produces pretty dry product for the most part. But if you don't know what you're shooting for, if you don't even know what the target is, you just tend to wander around a lot. You end up with a product that tries to be everything for everybody, and at the end of the day, it lacks soul, it lacks character, it lacks function. And I think even films go that way. I mean, I think everybody in the room could say, hey, I've been out to the films, I've watched a film, and it's gone for 3.5 hours, and I go, my God, why wasn't that film 20 minutes long? And it was because the director of photography loved this scene, and the actor did a brilliant performance of staring at the monitor or at the camera for 20 minutes, and you just our industry is just like any other entertainment industry. You have to be really aware of the beats, you have to be really aware of the product you're building, and start off strong. Start off with what you think that vision is.
I think milestones are good. I think the best way to get to a large, goal over like a 2-year period is to have short-term bursts along the way. And we're actually, our publisher's pretty forgiving as far as what we define our milestones as. But that says, we define them and we attempt to stick to them. And from that, we also have things like GDC and E3 and these, there's always, Editor's Day.
By the way, think suck horribly.
Which thing?
I don't think we should be having to build demos for E3 and GDC. I think that's like the worst thing that we do.
Well, we do. I think behind closed doors is the only way to do that.
Yeah.
The show floor, if you ask me, sucks for showing off your game. It's like what? Oh,
well, you can't hear
look at the booth page. What? And how are you going to explain something and people are tired and you walk by, you're like, oh, that looks like crap, and you keep going, and it's the wrong venue for it. And but for us, for technology at least, GDC and whatnot, we got to get our ducks in a row and make sure that our stuff's stable and we can make a good showing.
I think the discipline that the shows put on you to actually finish what you're working on is the best part about them, right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly,
actually putting the product
something deliverable that everyone can be proud of to see up there.
Putting the products out on the show is just a place to indulge the ADD in all of us, because we're walking like this, not really paying attention to anything that's going on.
Right. So within the sort of getting back to the core question of the panel that posed, is corporate creativity and Oxymoron. I mean, Lou, you can talk about sort of, within the sort of structure of electronic arts, you've been there from, you and Brett starting to now being part of EA. And I mean, Cliff and American can talk about, EA. And I mean, you guys can also talk about sort of being independent and, how
he's
that affects your
independent,
creativity.
so
Right.
I still work with EA, right?
Right, well, no, but I mean, they're independent, but you've had experience obviously within EA as well. Can you maybe tell us a little about sort of, I mean, do you think it is an oxymoron? I mean, what do you think? I mean, how does that affect your creativity?
To be honest with you, my what happened at EA with AIAS was very unusual because they kind of came to me and said, here's carte blanche to go and make a product. And I worked with a group of concept artists that were outside contract artists, and then the development team was an outside third-party developer. And so within the EA corporate structure, there was actually only myself and my EP working on AIAS. And that meant that all the creativity took place at the third party. And I can say that I witnessed internal destruction at EA when creativity came calling and people were like trying to get products done, and it sometimes seemed like a good place for it and sometimes didn't, and I couldn't really pass like judgment on the whole corporate thing or not. It's just, I mean, and certainly I don't think team size matters because you saw some of the same thing it did. I think most of what we're trying to say, it sounds like, is there needs to be one creative director, just like on a film, and then you try to let everyone have as much creative input as possible, but not to have 20 chefs in the kitchen.
Right, someone has to be.
Because that seems to be one of the biggest dangers, is to that a horse created by committee is a mule kind of thing. You really have to be careful of that.
So I think the creation by committee, creation with the feedback from committee is crucial. Within electronic arts, any kind of creative endeavor that you do has to have creative buy-off from the people that run the organization. And like I said, they're pretty smart, so it's not easy to pull the wool over their eyes. You have to really do your homework. But is it oxymoron to be creative within a culture? I think not at all. In fact, I think if anything, being part of electronic arts forces you to be more creative, not less creative. You just have to be able to justify it, rationalize it, and back it up. What you can't do in an organization like this is, even as independent as Westwood is, and we're probably the most renegade and rogue of any of the developers, we're trying not to be, but it's part of our nature. We're the scorpion. Even though we try very hard to facilitate the same kind of process, we really have to defend our ideas, and that's a very, very different process. So I've even talked to a few people around here over the last couple of days. They say, well, how is it in EA? And I said, well, it's great because they make you better. And so do I have the creative freedom to just do whatever, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't, and I'll spend $10 million, who cares? Well, no, I don't get to spend $10 million of the shareholders' money without really being able to justify why I think the idea is great. It doesn't stifle creativity, it eliminates hugely creative risks that have no basis in fact. So if you have a great idea, and you think it's a great idea, it's incumbent upon you to defend it.
Well, I guess it's
and
key there, though, that I mean, the people that you have to defend it to actually do know games.
Yeah, and they really do. I mean, I know there's horror stories out there, but the reality is these guys have been around a long time, and they get it wrong. They're human, just like anybody else, occasionally, but not very often. Most of the time, they're right. And as I run Westwood, and I tell my teams, I get my whole team together. We have ideas, and I say, okay, so I'm the leader, and I'm sure you feel the same way. It's like, look, I'm going to make the final call. That's my job. I'm going to make lots of calls. I'm going to make lots of wrong calls, but hopefully, if I'm a good leader, I'm making more right calls than I am wrong calls. And if I ever override something, it's incumbent upon you to convince me that you're right, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to take it very carefully. If at the end of the day I say, no, you know what, I just disagree, then you have to live with the fact I disagree and say, well, he was wrong that time.
But a good leader is willing to hear a person out, and even, of course, admit that they're wrong. And,
sure.
Recognize that they have their own ideas, and other people sometimes have better ideas. It's the way it works. I don't have a lot of experience with the big corporate machine. My experience with the publishers has been positive. Infogrames has been very good with us as far as we tell them what the game's about, and they have faith in us to assume that the game will be badass.
Do you think you could be as creative though if you were working internally at Infogrames? Do you ever think about that?
I'm speculating, but I find that a lot of the corporate environments like that, and could be somewhat limiting. I mean, I've said before, once you get to a company that's 30 or more people, you hire people to watch people to watch people to watch people, and you wind up with the multi-boss syndrome, where the one guy comes by and says, "You need to be working on this," and the other guy goes by, and "He's full of crap. You need to be working on that." and people don't know what to do, where to think.
That's hard. And it happens. I mean, in any bigger company.
I mean, not to bag on EA at all, because absolutely wonderful company. But one of the scariest things I think I ever saw there was someone who had created the creativity flowchart, which I was like, whoa, wait a second, so that's how it's done. And they pasted this thing up everywhere, and of course this got some great creative comments written all over it, but aside from that, I don't think it ever really generated any creativity.
But you know,
there's no recipe.
But it was an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, well, that's
I mean,
is there a recipe?
Is there a recipe for creativity? And this was really more about sort of the way you're supposed to filter your creativity through the corporate structure. But it
just sounds like a producer trying to fill his day. If you ask me.
But you know, it was an interesting experiment.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
And I think that's a product of having a company that's focused on knowing creative insight, creative vision, and creative leaders are going to drive great product, and that's the big win. It's a hits-driven business. Second best doesn't make it at all. So they know that, and as a corporation, everybody gets that.
Right.
But at the same time, I can understand why creative people like Peter Molyneux and others found it frustrating because, you know, I think it comes down to a certain amount of confidence, arrogance, whatever you want to call it. You get to a certain point in your career and you go, hey, you know what? I made a lot of games. I've shipped 5 games that sold over 1 million units. Can I just go do the game? And it's like, no, you have to explain it. And you can look at that as a really horrible thing and decide this is just not for me. Or you can look at it and say, you know what? That's a great checks and balance to make sure I'm actually still in touch, to make sure I haven't lost my grip. Because, and I think that's what it always comes down to. At the end of the day, that kind of process, that kind of, like the creative flowchart, this kind of over-analysis of everything is just a way to try to define the undefinable. You know, what makes a game fun? Well, we really don't know what makes a game fun. We know what makes it suck. That we can clearly articulate. And if we kind of avoid all of those, then it'll be fun, right?
No, not
necessarily. Right, so.
Cool. I should open it up in case anyone has any questions at this point.
I would think one of the problems would be the pressure to create blockbuster games. And at least in other entertainment forms like film and music, it seems like that desire to create one product which then can be sold to everybody tends to leave us with rather bland output. So how does the video game industry keep from ending up with a bunch of NSYNCs and Britney Spears?
There's no pressure at all. If you don't make a blockbuster at EA, you don't get to be at EA. No pressure.
To some extent, we're limited creatively by the fact that our society is largely based upon a lowest common denominator philosophy of that at any point a child may be watching, which limits you in a lot of ways. And especially if you look at the BS setup for ratings that we have right now, it's like, oh, if you have a little bit of red blood, you're mature. You're the equivalent of an R-rated movie. Whereas if we had a game that had a lot of the content that was in an R-rated movie, you know, nudity and drug use and hardcore violence, it would get adults only and would be labeled, you know, just pornography. And there's a remarkable discrepancy there. And
yeah, not being flippant, I think that there is an incredible amount of pressure within a company like Electronic Arts to deliver a convincing argument that it will be a hit product. And that's a natural, it's a natural result of economics. The company has, despite its hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, it only has so much it can commit to development every year. And when you're up against peers like The Sims and John Madden Football and, you know, FIFA Soccer and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, I mean, it's hard to convince yourselves and the organization that you're the right place to put the money. But that does not, by any means, generate a vanilla, no-risk scenario. Quite the opposite. You better have a damn good story. You better have something that's really going to stick to the walls, because you can't get there if you don't. So I think Medal of Honor did it by, they did this great demo, and you go, wow, that's amazing. And they go, yeah, now the rest of the game has to look like that, so we better get cracking. But at least there was this incredible push to get high quality out first. So, you know, it's no accident that big corporations that have few resources and tons of creative talent deliver again and again and again top charting titles. It burns a ton of people out in the process. It's not an easy thing to do. It's no easier or harder than any other industry. And there's no guarantee of success. And the pressure is always there. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have no illusions about the fact that I have some right to make games. I only have the right to make my shareholders money. And that's it. And if I can't do that, then, you know, time to retire.
Strong words.
That's true.
Another question?
I guess it's kind of a big question. I'm wondering what people's opinions are about electronic distribution of games. If that starts to become more of a reality, how do you think it's going to change the developer-publisher relationship?
Well, we were talking about something earlier that I think it
Tough
might affect
question.
in a big way, which was Cliff saying about the hour-long gameplay. I think once electronic distribution starts happening, we're going to see more and more games coming out like that. You'll see more games that are released in a sequential, hour-long mode, thing like that.
Episodic?
I mean, yeah, episodic releases, and certainly it'll allow for developers to go into their garages again and start creating games that they don't necessarily have to go out and sell to a publisher. They can actually go out and grassroots raise an audience, just like it did in the old days.
Shareware.
Shareware. I think we've seen how that could function in the past, and I think that eventually it will get back there again.
I think that people like to shop in stores, and it'll never go away entirely. They might change forms quite a few times depending on pressure from electronic distribution, but so I firmly believe that it will never quite replace it, just like rental videos never replaced cinema. I mean, it changed it, it made a different kind of pressure. But I think it does, there is actually something that's not really exactly what you asked, but I think it is changing dramatically the relationship of publisher and developer, which is electronic support or ongoing support, the live team. Products are getting more and more important. It's getting more and more important to support a product after you ship it. It becomes very uncomfortable as a publisher to hire an external developer to make a product and then not know how to commit that person to a long-term support of that product. So do you internalize it? Well, then if you internalize it, then why are you paying them a royalty? Because now you have to own their problems. Well, if you try to lock them up, they're like 10 guys or 20 guys in a small studio somewhere. They got to get on to the next thing. And so that dynamic, it's not, nobody's doing it on purpose. It's just a dynamic that causes a lot of friction, and it makes it very difficult.
We, after Unreal Tournament shipped, we were looking at, okay, we're going to do the obligatory add-on pack and, limit it, okay, there's this many gamers and UT sells to this many, and then you're going to make an add-on pack that can only sell to this many, and these kinds of things we looked at, and we said, let's just release bonus packs, free stuff for the game. And it wound up working well because it kept people playing the game instead of playing a competitor's game. It kept the vital word of mouth going where they were still playing UT because we were releasing free stuff. And then it gave us the opportunity to bundle it all up and do a Game of the Year edition later. And it made perfect sense. And as far as electronic distribution goes, people try and think of this as like black and white where, everybody's going to download games someday. It's like, it's probably going to start to be a hybrid. Maybe you'll buy a game and then there's an aftermarket subscription service of a new level per week where you can pay for or something like that, and shades of gray, and some games will be available, to download online. I can anticipate a lot of massively multiplayer games, soon being released just for free. Just you get the game and they subsidize it by the monthly payments that you pay for it, and that's the ultimate ideal distribution method for that. Download the game, first month's free, everything after that you pay. It would seem to be cool, but who knows if we're ready for it yet.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff you're talking about is great, but obviously it's sort of at least several years out. I'm wondering, especially being a fan of your idea of making shorter games, especially single-player games, 4 hours, 8 hours. The biggest concern I have about doing that is obviously like the rental market in terms of Blockbuster. I mean, there are great games that came out this year that you can rent, play over the weekend, finish, have a great experience, and never actually get a lot of money to the publisher or the developer because no one actually needs to drop down $50 for it. And I'm just kind of wondering, until electronic distribution kicks in, do you guys feel, do you guys have a problem with the rental market? Do you guys think it's hurting sales? And if you do you think there's anything actually as an industry that can be done to deal with that situation? Or do you feel that's just sort of the way it is, and as developers we need to design games to deal with that until electronic distribution actually kicks in 3, 4, 5 years or whenever, if it ever happens?
Never underestimate the fact that people like to own stuff. Mm-hmm. Somehow the movie industry has managed to get people to want to buy DVDs. And I don't know how they did that, but I have friends who buy DVDs left and right. They piss away money on them, and half of them they never watch. Or the other half they watch once and never watch it again, but they have it, they own it. And maybe it's just me, but I don't understand. I own maybe like 3 movies, Scarface, Big Lebowski, and a couple others, but that's about it. And it's like, okay, so if you're going to buy it and watch it once, why not just rent it? But for some reason, people are pack rats. They like to collect, and I'm banking on the philosophy that people are going to want to buy games and just have them to have them, especially if you have the multiplayer aspect, because every time you play it, it's different.
And actually, building on the multiplayer aspect, depending on what you offer as your gaming experience, many of these games require an identity and a registration, and that's tied to the actual product itself. So we have two classes at Westwood of licenses. There's a consumer license, which is what you see in the United States and everything else, and you have internet gaming rooms for Korea and other places. Denmark has a great one I was just at, called Boomtown. And so that's a different kind of experience. So do we mind that? Not at all, because the people who are having those experiences, the funny thing is the people go in there and they play it, they get hooked on your game, and if you made a good game, they go, I gotta own that. And then they go buy a game. So not only did you, get the money from the guy who had the IGR, who pays you a certain licensing fee to keep all those accounts open, now you've created equity because that person who played it now has an account online, and they want to go get the game so they can play more and own it forever. And I think you're right. I think that you don't underestimate how much people want to own things. I don't think episodic or small entertainment experiences would negate people wanting to own things at all.
I love those cafes.
One of the reasons people like to own, say, DVDs, for instance, or is because people like to share their movie-going experience with their friends. Yeah. So maybe you didn't go and see it at the theater with them, but it's always a joy to be in the room with someone who hasn't seen a film before, who now you get to share their movie-watching experience. And I think the same thing is starting to become true of games, where people come over to my house now and I'm like, you've got to see Grand Theft Auto. Watch me hit this guy with my car. And it's like, and they're like, you're insane, but okay, let's play. And I think that that's happening more and more, where now games are really becoming a part of the mainstream. They're becoming a fixture in people's living rooms. And yeah, when people come over to a party at your house, they're going to bust out the games. So owning the games, or even going and renting them again and again for when people come over, I think they're just becoming like film, like music, like anything. I don't think that the rental market can hurt it that badly. I'm
going to go out on a limb real quick and say that I think that I love those gaming shops. I was in Korea a few months ago, and it's just crazy over there.
It's awesome.
And I really hope it takes off here, because you know what, guys? That's going to be our theater. If you think about it, we currently do not have a public venue where people will go and pay the game and then have it come out in the stores and then purchase it. Yeah. This is the place where people will walk by, they'll see the posters for the game, they can have a chance to try it, and then maybe 2 weeks, a month later, it comes out.
They can play it for there's no piracy risk if you have controls over it. I mean, that's brilliant.
So Sony has a really cool advertising campaign in the UK that talks about the third place, and I think the idea there is that you have your first place, which is home, your second place, which is work, and the third place is that place you escape to. And more and more people are making that third place their interactive world.
And we make games, so all three of them are in one place.
Exactly.
One other thing we should talk about, you talking about multiplayer, the idea of sort of users as creators and helping sort of add creativity to the product.
Love those guys.
Yeah, I mean, sort of tell us a little bit about how that's sort of changed. Has it changed the way you guys design games at all?
We didn't do it. Thank you very much for guys like Unreal and Quake that opened that up wide. But we didn't make it, but we certainly recognize it. I mean,
now you're trying to steal it.
Yeah,
are you now in some ways working on creating tools to allow those people
actually,
to be
not only
creative?
do we make tools, he's talking about our mod college. For Renegade, we actually flew a bunch of guys out that are well renowned for making mods, took them out to Vegas here, and this is where Westwood is, and we had them hang out, took them to shows, and taught them. We actually had a college, a week-long college. They sat with the artists, they sat with the designers and programmers. We gave them all the tools we used to make the game and said, here's exactly how you do a thing. And the reason we did that is because we're shipping into a market that has well-established engines and processes and everything, and we wanted to make sure that we can't guarantee that they would make anything with it. We wanted to make sure that, by God, they had the opportunity to use these tools to make any product they wanted. And that turns out, I guess there's 3 already announced. One's like World War II, and I don't know what the other 2, but they sound really cool, and we've seen some of the early stuff, and it's like, wow. So we even had the danger of having a mod out that would have flying vehicles before we did. And it's just like, man, that's great.
I'm looking forward to the G.I. Joe mod. I think that'll be
good. There's going to be some amazing stuff out there, and they'll still be making stuff for Unreal. They'll still be making stuff for Quake, and that's the great thing about it. And I don't know that we'll continue to build our own engines as long as we can get the functionality elsewhere. We're not in the business of building technology like Cliff is, but we certainly are in the business of providing opportunities for people to make their own entertainment, and that's very different from our philosophy with the real-time strategy games, where we're trying to control the environment to make it a sport. Right. In the case of the Renegade stuff, it's like clear that we're not going to be able to do that, nor is that the best thing for the consumer.
Here's your staggering stat for the day. Half of the people that work at Epic worked in the mod community.
Yeah.
and we hired them, and they're some of our best employees. I mean, you wind up with this kind of cyclical thing where you have your iteration of the game, it ships with the tools, people start making things, and for the next game you find the best ones and pick them out and hire them, and the cycle competes. And you wind up with somebody who not only is like a fanboy of the series and is just excited to work on it, but they're also proven, you've seen what they can do, and you don't have to spend all the time training them to get them up to date with the tools, and that helps our licensees as well. And I don't want to go into that again, but people who license our tech, they have a pool of talent from which to draw from, and that's kind of cool.
Phenomenal.
Any other questions? Or let's see what else we can talk about.
Let's talk about you. No.
Let's see what else we're going to talk about.
Somebody yell something out over there.
Hey, Cliff.
That's right.
You got to put amaze in. Kids love that shit.
Yeah. Oh, we got a question.
Cliff, you've got a situation where you guys have to put out showcase product at the same time as putting out a set of tools.
It's a bitch.
Right. So you're stuck with a certain creative limitation that says this product has to stand up for itself as a showcase, as a game, as a multiplayer product, and yet still have enough hooks for everybody else to buy it as an engine.
Yeah, we're basically trying to achieve like 8 different goals at once, and it's hard, and it requires a lot of focus. And there are decisions about the design that we make that we take into account. Okay, we're going to create a certain tool set for this game. What do we think people might want to buy for the tech? And so for long distance, you have Unreal 2, which is single player, and it's going to have cut sequences and cool scripted sequences, and Unreal Tournament 2, which is multiplayer. And so there's 2 games that are simultaneously being developed that use the same existing tech and focus in different areas. And we have a whole little scripting sequence system that's being developed where it allows you to make the Half-Life type sequences or even some of the real-time cinematics. And that was a conscious decision where we sat there and we said, we're going to need a tool like this because we want to put it in our game and we think our licensees will do it.
And the other portion is that you're stuck at some level with a dictate where Tim says, I'm going to do 150,000 polys on this. Use them.
Yeah.
Use them big.
Well, when you're shipping things in the PC, it's a lot trickier because you're trying to hit that broad market of all the way down from the 486 with the Voodoo to the the GeForce 12, and that's a programming task in itself. But who am I to? If I come into a room and a programmer programs a cool mushroom cloud effect, then we'll figure something out. We'll figure a way to shoehorn it in there. It won't shatter the vision.
I think actually that's an interesting point, and we all kind of laugh at that, but think about the frustration our consumers have. They buy a system, they pay good money for it, and if they're not the absolute fanatic core gamer, they're pretty much faced with the fact that 6 months later that isn't the shiniest thing on the block, and a year later they're like, wow, that might not even play a game that comes out. And that's tragic. That's not a good thing. It's bad. It's what's probably limiting the action markets more than anything else, is that it's very hard to make a game that's compelling at that huge span of capacity.
It's like every 6 months going from the VCR to the DVD, just making that
really
like
tough.
TV and back.
Yeah. It limits the market. Hopefully, at some point it'll.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you're building a game that's like coming out 2 years later, so you got to kind of imagine what's going to be there. It's really tough.
Making games is hard.
But it's fun.
That's been my slogan all year. People are like, how am I going to program that? I'm like, yeah, making games is hard. Sorry.
You guys talked a little bit about sort of your creative ideas, and Lou, you talked a lot about EA, how you have to defend your creative ideas. I mean, how does it? Tell us a little bit about. I mean, you obviously have a lot of ownership of what you create and how you want it to
promote. Not defend.
Yes.
Defend is
Yeah. But for that, I mean, how does it feel when they're not when your idea you can't convince other people of it? I mean, is there a sense that how do you deal with that? Because a lot of people have creative ideas that.
If you have a choice, so if you have an idea, you really want to do it, you have a choice. You can either accept the fact that it's probably not such a great idea if you weren't able to convince other people and move on.
Right.
Or you can say, I just got to do this thing and figure some other way to do it. And I think that does lead some people to leave bigger companies that have structure. I mean, it's just absolutely inevitable. They might be right.
Case in point.
Yeah, they might be right, and at the end of the day, if they're right, then they'll be handsomely rewarded, and if they're wrong, then whoever backed them will go, wow, that was a risk. I'm from Vegas. I was born and raised here, so it's all about quantifying risk. And I personally like having a litmus test that tells me, you know, that's a risky thing. And I know it sounds great to you, but to us it sounds risky. And that to me is a motivating thing. I don't know how I'll respond one day when I think this isn't a risky thing. I think it's a great thing, and I can't convince anybody. I don't know. Maybe I go build it myself or not. I'm not sure. Probably not.
Does that play into sort of focus groups too and that kind of thing? I mean, when you're showing the game and you have creative things in there that you think...
That's a dirty word.
Hey, I like focus groups.
Yeah, Mark talked about it this morning. I mean, the idea
risk adverse. You know, so Brett and I started the company, as you mentioned earlier. We were so risk adverse because if you ever took a misstep in the first 7 years of being an independent developer in the beginning of this industry, well, you just didn't take a second step. It was over, you know. No. So I'm absolutely sure that I am so far in the conservative risk-adverse side that it somehow inhibits me from feeling kind of self-righteous and going out with this crazy idea and pushing it. But it hasn't stopped me from making what I believe are really creative products and have been rewarded with awards as well as critical acclaim and sales success. So I don't think you have to be the rebel to be successful. You might be, and that's okay, but you don't have to be.
All right, well, I think we're done. I guess everyone's heading over to the awards. Back to you, Paul. Or? Yeah. Thanks.